Me, 45, run a branding studio in Austin, built this place from the ground up over the last 12 years. Focus on corporate identity and ethical design. Have a team of 15 staff, almost entirely women. Very progressive vibe office is covered in safe space signage. Email signatures all have pronouns. Mandated we hold weekly workshops on systemic bias and inclusivity. My personal beliefs are the bedrock of how I run this ship. Business has always been solid, revenue climbing steadily year over year, but lately something feels off. Past 5 months, I've been hemorrhaging potential contracts. Specifically happens right after the initial face-to-face sit-down. Leads are hot over the phone. They love the digital portfolio. But once they step into my office, they freeze up. Few days later, I get the polite rejection. Email thought it was just the economy. At first, maybe just a string of bad luck, but it's happened 8 times in a row. Now all of them men, big accounts too, serious money on the table. Got another rejection this morning from a guy running a logistics fleet. He was super hyped last week. Now it's decided to pursue other options. Thanks for your time. Standard corporate brush-off. Open up my client database and look at the hard data. 8 losses in 5 months. Every single one was a male decision maker. Every single one went cold. Immediately after shaking my hand. This isn't random variance anymore. It's a trend call-up. Linda, my executive consultant, need a sanity check. Tell her I'm bleeding male leads. After the first meeting, she pauses and asks me to walk her through the pitch. Start with the logistics guy. From last week, we sat down, I opened with our mission statement, talked for a while about our commitment to dismantling toxic masculinity, explained how we prioritize marginalized voices in our design language, mentioned we strictly vet clients for ethical alignment. Linda goes dead silent on the line, asks how the guys usually react to that intro. Tell her they usually just nod. Maybe shift in their seats a bit. Figure they're just checking their privilege. It's part of the process. She sighs loud enough to distort the phone. Audio, I'm going to shoot you straight here. Go ahead. That's what I pay you for. You are likely insulting them before they even sign the check. Feel my hackles rise. Immediately tell her, I'm just being transparent about who we are. We have a right to filter for clients who match our vibe. I get it, but there's a difference between having values and building a wall. She tries an analogy. Imagine walking into a shop and the owner immediately tells you they don't like men and prefer working with people who aren't like you. Would you give them your money? Tell her that's not a fair comparison because of power dynamics. To the guy in the chair, it feels exactly the same. He feels judged. You're telling him he's a problem before he's even opened his mouth. Never looked at it that way. Ask her what the play is. Just don't lead with the manifesto. Ask about their business first. Show them the values and the work later. The word manifesto stings. Because it hits close to home, spend the afternoon stewing on it. Review my meeting agendas. Linda is right. I spend the first 20 minutes lecturing on social justice and our zero tolerance rules before asking about their Q3 goals. I'm basically conducting a moral audit that night. Jessica walks in, she runs the day-to-day ops while I handle sales. Says we need to discuss the churn rate. Tell her Linda thinks I'm scaring them off. You are? I've been trying to drop hints for weeks. Surprised she agrees. Ask why she didn't just say it straight. I did. You told me I was internalizing the patriarchy and needed to do the work. Vaguely recall that conversation. Jessica opens her tablet and slides it over. I did some digging. Reached out to mutuals to see why these deals really died. Stomach drops ask what they said. They said you're hostile, that you turn business meetings into political rallies, that you make them feel like villains just for being men, that you lecture them on their privilege before even looking at their project specs. Every sentence she speaks feels like a physical blow. Realize I haven't been building a culture. I've been building a fortress. Jessica starts showing me screenshots of texts from industry mutuals. It's not just bad fit, the feedback is personal. Love their design work, but the guy is exhausting. Felt like I was sitting before a tribunal, not a creative agency. I was being interviewed on my politics before we even discussed the budget. Would rather hire someone who doesn't treat me like a hostile entity. Reading these is absolutely crushing thought. I was being a principled leader, standing up for what's right. Turns out I'm just alienating everyone in range. Jessica sighs and brings up a specific disaster from last month. Couple who ran a boutique real estate firm, CEO, brought his wife, who was the VP of marketing. I remember that meeting. Clearly, I spent the entire hour addressing only her, deliberately ignored the husband to empower her voice in the room, made comments about how refreshing it was to see women in charge, thought I was being the ultimate ally. Jessica shakes her head. They signed with a competitor 3 days later. The wife called our contact and said you made her skin crawl, said you were incredibly condescending to her husband, that he treats her as an equal, but you dismissed him entirely without cause. Never occurred to me. They saw it that way, thought I was lifting her up, actually just insulted her partner and wasted their time. We lost a 6-figure contract because you were trying to make a point instead of a sale. Jessica warns me that in a city this size, reputation is everything. People are starting to warn each other to stay away. Ask her what the hell I'm supposed to do. Stop leading with the manifesto. Start acting like a service provider. Quit judging people before they've even sat down. Stop making every interaction a battleground. She's right, and I hate that she's right. Next morning, I decide to bite the bullet. Pull up an email from a lost lead named Brian, runs a fintech platform. He ghosted me about 8 weeks ago. Send him a note asking for the unvarnished truth. Tell him I'm auditing my sales process and need to know why he walked. He replies within 40 minutes. Okay, I'll be straight with you. Your portfolio is world-class, but the meeting was bizarre. You spent the first half hour lecturing me on your agency's social values. I tried to pivot to our user acquisition goals, and you interrupted to ask about my board's gender ratio. When I mentioned my co-founders were guys I went to college with, you visibly rolled your eyes. You made a crack about tech bros that was pretty insulting. Wince as I read that I remember saying it, thought I was being witty. Brian continues, I'm actually very committed to diversity. We just launched, but I felt convicted before I said a word. I didn't feel like a potential partner. I felt like a suspect. So I took my money to a firm that wanted to hear about my software. Email ends with, no hard feelings, but you need to chill. Stare at the monitor for a long time. He's completely right. Saw a group of guys and assumed the worst, didn't ask about their roadmap. Or their ethics, just labeled them and treated them like dirt. Show the email to Jessica. Admit that I'm the problem. I'm filtering out good people because they don't pass a purity test. I invented in my head, tell her I want to try a new tactic. Have 2 pitches lined up this week, both male CEOs, both solid accounts going to focus on the work. Leave the politics at the door. Jessica looks relieved. Just show them who we are by how we treat them, not by lecturing them. First meeting is Wednesday. Allen, 40s, founder of a cybersecurity firm, built it from his garage over 15 years. Usually I'd start with the speech about dismantling patriarchal structures. Instead, I take a deep breath and smile. Thanks for coming in, Allen. Talk to me about the company. What's the vision? He lights up immediately. Guy is clearly obsessed with his work, spends 10 minutes explaining his encryption protocols and his mission to protect user data. I actually listen, really listen, ask follow-up questions about the tech, not the demographics. Don't interrupt to challenge him. Treat him like a business owner, not a symbol. Ask him what brought him to our door. I saw the rebranding you did for the Apex project. The messaging was razor sharp, design was clean. That's exactly the level of execution I need. We spend an hour digging into his pain points. He's worried about a competitor eating his market share, asks about our creative process. I explain the methodology without using buzzwords. Focus on user empathy and data-driven insights. Avoid the usual spiel about decolonizing design. About 40 minutes in, he asks about the team composition. I noticed on your site your staff is very diverse. How does that actually translate to the work? This is the trap I usually fall into. Normally I'd launch a 10-minute monologue about systemic oppression. Instead, I just answer the question on its merits. Having different backgrounds in the room kills blind spots. Helps us avoid tone-deaf messaging and reach wider audiences. He nods slowly. That makes a lot of sense. ROI on perspective. Meeting wraps up and he's smiling, says he's excited to see the proposal, walk him to the elevator. Feels strange, Leiter didn't feel like a combatant. Felt like a partner, get back to my desk, and Jessica is waiting. Well, did you scare him off? Tell her I think he's going to sign. She looks genuinely shocked. What did you do? I listened. I treated him like a client, not a defendant in a trial. She actually smiles. Imagine that. Second meeting is Friday. Robert, late 60s, runs a legacy hardware chain, classic old school vibe. White hair, firm handshake, calls me son once by accident. Old me would have written him off immediately as a relic, would have started the meeting with a lecture on pronouns. Instead, I offer him water and ask about the business. He tells me it's been family owned for 40 years. His daughter just took over as VP of operations, says they need to modernize without alienating the core base. She's dragging us into the 21st century, thank God. I know hammers, she knows TikTok. He laughs. Realize he respects the hell out of her. He's humble, knows his limitations, wants to learn. I would have missed all of this if I'd judged him on sight. We have a solid strategy session, talk about bridging the generational gap in his branding. At the end, he leans back. I'll be honest, I heard rumors you can be a bit intense. Stomach tightens. Heard you grill people on their politics before you take their money. Feel my face heat up. Admit that it's true, but I'm working on it. Tell him I'm trying to let the work speak for itself. Now he nods. I respect a man with convictions, but I'm here to sell drills. Glad you kept it about business today. He leaves, and I realize I dodged a bullet. He gave me a chance, despite the grapevine warning him off. Both Alan and Robert sign contracts within the week. 6 figures and new revenue secured, because I kept my mouth shut. Month later, sit down with a guy named James. He runs a nonprofit for educational equity. This is my dream client progressive mission. Social justice baked in temptation to go full activist mode is strong force myself to stick to the script. Ask about his donor retention and outreach metrics midway through. He pauses. I know your agency has a reputation for being very ideological. How does that impact your deliverables? Pause, old me would have said, everything is political. New me takes a breath. Our values guide how we treat our team, but our job is to serve your mission, not impose ours. We focus on effective strategy, period. He lets out a breath he was holding. That's a relief. I was worried based on what I'd heard. Ask him what he heard. That you sometimes prioritize your own agenda over the client's needs. There it is. Again, my reputation is walking into rooms. Before I do tell him, that's a fair critique of my past. But I'm here to help him succeed, not to preach. He signs the next day, says he needs a partner, not a pundit. 3 months into the new approach, haven't lost a single lead after the first meeting signed, 6 new accounts in a row. Revenue is up, team morale is steady. Jessica brings it up in our Monday stand-up. The vibe has changed around here. We're actually doing work instead of arguing with ghosts. Atmosphere in the office has shifted. Tension is gone. Team is actually laughing in the break room again. We're focused on deliverables instead of defending our existence during a retro. Chloe, one of my junior strategists, raises her hand, asks if she can speak freely about the old days. Tell her to go ahead. It was brutal watching you torch those leads, boss. I'd spend week building a killer deck, perfect strategy. Then you'd walk in and nuke the whole thing with a 20-minute rant about systemic injustice. We lost the work before they even saw the slides, stings to hear. But she's right, Maya. Our copy lead chimes in. I'm as feminist as they come, but using a sales meeting as a soapbox felt gross. Like we were holding them hostage. They came for a logo, not a sermon. Realize I wasn't just hurting the bottom line. I was demoralizing my own people. Thought I was leading the charge. Actually just making their jobs impossible. 6 months into the new protocol. Books are looking better than they have in 5 years. Retention is up. Referrals are trickling back in. I'm sleeping better, not waking up, ready to fight. The world. Get an email on a Tuesday morning. It's Brian, the fintech guy who told me to chill out months ago. Heard through the grapevine you've mellowed out. We have a new product launching in Q4. Need an agency. Willing to roll the dice if you are. He's giving me a second shot schedule. The sit down for the following week, walk in with zero agenda other than solving his problem. No purity tests, no side eye at his board, composition. Just strategy, user acquisition, and design, completely different energy. Halfway through he laughs. You're actually listening to me this time. I can see us working together. He signs a 6-figure retainer. That afternoon would have been a bridge burned forever. If I hadn't swallowed my pride during the onboarding, he pulls me aside. I want you to know why I came back. Most guys get defensive when you call them out. You actually asked for feedback and acted on it. That's rare in this town, feel a lump in my throat. Validation that change is actually possible. 1 year mark since the pivot client roster has effectively doubled, still run a progressive shop, still have the same values. But now I express them by paying people well and treating clients with respect. Not by lecturing strangers. Jessica and I grab coffee to celebrate the anniversary. She looks at me over her latte. You know what I'm most proud of? You didn't double down. Easier to blame the market, blame the toxic males, blame the system. But you looked in the mirror and fixed the glitch. Admit to her that I was terrified. At first thought if I wasn't fighting, I was surrendering. You were traumatized by the industry, she says. You built this place as a bunker to keep the bad guys out. Problem was, you locked the door on the good guys too. She nailed it. Realize you can have principles without weaponizing them. Get a call from Linda, my consultant. I hear you're the comeback kid of the quarter. Asks what the real turning point was. Tell her it was Brian's email. He said I made him feel attacked before I even knew his name. Realized I was doing exactly what I hated being done to me. Linda chuckles. Empathy remains the harshest teacher, 2 years into the transformation. My reputation is done, a 180. People aren't whispering warnings anymore. They're asking for intros at a design summit in Chicago. Run into a woman named Dana, runs a similar boutique agency. Very loud about her politics. Basically a mirror image of who I used to be. She corners me at the mixer. Heard you sold out. Heard you stopped talking about the cause in your pitches. Ask her how she figures you went corporate. Chasing the bag instead of the mission. Tell her I didn't stop being a feminist. I just stopped leading. With the manifesto started proving my values through the work and the culture, not the lecture. She crosses her arms, looks defensive. So I should just hide who I am? No, just let the action speak louder than the intro. She shakes her head, sneering a bit. I won't compromise my principles for a check. The implication stings, but I recognize the look in her eyes. It's fear and certainty mixed together. She's exactly where I was, 2 years ago, convinced she's the only righteous person in the room. Wish her luck and walk away, didn't compromise anything. Just finally learned how to do business. Watch Dana. Walk away, head high, convinced I'm the enemy, see my past self in her rigid posture. So certain she's right. So defensive. Completely isolated on an island of moral superiority. Later that afternoon, I take the podium, giving a talk on operationalizing ethics without alienation. Basically a 40-minute breakdown of how to have a soul without being a jerk about it. Talk about the difference between living your values and weaponizing them, finish up, and step off stage immediately surrounded by a group of business owners, mostly guys, looking like they just went to therapy. Thanks for saying that out loud, man. There's a lot of us who support the cause, but feel like we're walking on eggshells. One guy runs a logistics chain, shakes his head. I tried to hire an agency like yours last year. Got a 20-minute lecture on my privilege before we even discussed the SOW. I was there to pay them 50 grand, and they treated me like I was on trial. I just left. Never called them back. Hear the genuine frustration in his voice. He wasn't against the message. He was exhausted by the delivery. Realized my righteousness was a prison I built for myself. Thought I was a warrior. Turns out I was just a barrier. Still believe every word of the mission statement. Still run a shop that prioritizes equity and fairness. But now I understand that inclusive includes the client sitting across from me. Includes the guys who just want to do good business. Means treating people as individuals, not representatives of a demographic. My agency is stronger now than it ever was, making real impact. Because I'm actually in the room with people I used to shut out, helping them see the value of diversity through results, not through shame. TFW, you realize you were the toxic one all along. TFW, you treat business meetings like struggle sessions. TFW, you make clients apologize for existing before taking their money. TFW, you finally shut up and your revenue doubles. TFW, you realize actions change minds. Lectures just harden hearts. TFW, men give you a second chance when you actually treat them like humans. Still a feminist, still proud of it. But I express it by paying my team well and doing killer work, not by running a political litmus test on every stranger who walks in the door. Those 8 guys who ghosted me taught me more than any book ever did. They taught me by walking away, by refusing to pay for the privilege of being insulted. They weren't intimidated by strong women. They were just tired of hostile professionals. They weren't anti-progress. They were anti-asshole. Took me 42 years and a near bankruptcy to figure that out. Having values doesn't mean you get to be a prick. Being principled doesn't mean you have to be miserable to work with. Feminism doesn't require making enemies of half the population. My team is happier because they aren't fighting my battles. My clients are thriving because we're focused on their growth. My reputation is salvaged because I stopped leading with judgment and started leading with service. That's the real work. Sustainable, effective, actual change. Should have been doing it this way from day one. But I had to lose those contracts to learn the lesson. Had to watch them walk out the door to realize I was the one locking it. Better to learn it late than never. Better to grow than to stay right and broke. That's the pivot from using clients as an audience for my performance to serving them with excellence, demonstrating the values in silence, and letting the results scream. That's what works. That's what stays.